The corpses strewn about the spaceport, mangled and bloodied, were a poignant reminder of human nature. Whenever a group of them clashed, such destruction was the end result. I was trying to conceal my personal feelings, but it was growing more difficult by the minute. While Terrans were not an outward enemy of the Federation, they were enemies of peace. That was reason enough to dislike them. As I finally slumbered on the flagship, the sight of the past 2 days plagued my dreams. Dead humans, petrified in ways I didn't think possible, floating in a spaceborne tomb. Agony plastered on their ashen faces. I snapped awake, panting, none the more rested than when I closed my eyes. Why did fate pick Gauche and I to find that ghost ship? As awful as it was to say, a part of me felt that the humans' calamity was the merit of their own meddling. Tampering with scientific fields that should never be touched was bound to end in disaster. If it weren't for Gauche's selfless altruism, misdirected at a lot of savages, I would have left the Terrans to their own devices. That was usually the best decision for all parties. But I wasn't the type of person to leave my best friend alone, squaring off with horrors beyond comprehension. After narrowly escaping with our lives, I hoped I could talk some sense into him. We had sacrificed enough. It was time to return home. With the Pisces under Terran control, the crisis should be averted anyways. Dosh! I tapped a paw on the door to his quarters and lingered by the entryway. Can I come in? The only answer was silence, which earned an amused eye roll from me. The poor guy was probably too deep in slumber to be aroused. I decided to let him rest up and consult him later. I would just poke my head in to make sure he was all right. Odd. There was nobody in his room, or any indicators to suggest he'd been there at all. No belongings, wrinkles in his sheets, or mud tracked on the tile. Perhaps Gauche had fallen asleep elsewhere on the ship. I should try to track him down before panicking. But after wandering about the ship for half an hour, my mind left to grim conclusions. My best friend was absent from the mess hall, the med bay, and the armory too. Come to think of it, the last person I saw him with was General Rykov. That particular human had a dark history, with the blood of an entire species on his hands. He was infamous for discharging abominable weapons in combat. I warned Gauche not to prevent that scumbag, but of course he didn't listen. I found Rykov's interest in my best friend strange, and perhaps a bit concerning. There was no logical reason for an officer to side look to a patrolman. Gauche thought the Terran General was acting out of concern, but I believe that was the guise for his true motivation. If their years of deceit with the Federation taught us anything, it was that humans were incredible actors. What if the humans had something nefarious in mind for Gauche? Either they threw him away for being emotionally unfit, or worse, roped him into some sort of interrogation. Maybe Rykov wanted to grill the patrolman for information out of desperation to save his own hide. If I had evidence that the Terrans had done something unsavory, maybe the Federation soldiers would assist. No matter how much leverage the Terran Union had with the current Senate, they wouldn't want a kidnapping criminal with the helm of galactic forces. My paws scrambled towards Rykov's office of their own volition. The pale human was poring at the bags beneath his eyes, studying a series of papers.
So our prisoner says this spaceport was a smuggling outfit, specialized in weapons.
He summarized aloud.
The Kovian authorities had their pockets lined quite handsomely. It's incredible that a truckload of human mercenaries didn't draw any attention from the locals.
Barging into his office and demanding, "What did you do to my friend?" probably wasn't the best recourse. This required a diplomatic approach. Hopefully the General's actions would give me some inkling of his knowledge. I knocked on the exterior wall and forced myself to salute in the human way.
What is it?
The General growled, an irritated glint in his eyes.
I don't think I'll be of help. Try General Blaise.
Pardon me, sir. I forced a casual smile on my face, noting how Rykov's posture went rigid as he recognized me. It was as though he knew what I said about humans away from prying ears. Do you know where Gauche is? I can't find him anywhere.
I sent him to rest. He should be in his quarters, as you should be.
The human replied. He's not there. I haven't seen him since he spoke to you, I wanted to say. Since the end of the battle.
Maybe he got lost. Our ship designs aren't as straightforward as others in the Federation.
I looked all over the place. All of the usual suspects.
Well, I suppose you should just keep looking, Joffy.
Please, sir. I'm begging for your help, if you care about Gauche at all. He trusted you.
You really want a human's help? It must be serious then.
Rykov tried to keep his expression impassive, but his knitted brows betrayed his concern. I reminded myself with a hint of annoyance how skilled they were at faking emotions.
I'll send out a summons on the ship's PA. Is that all?
Anything you remember might help track him down, I said carefully. Where did you last see Gauche?
He wandered off as we were securing the Pisces. The big guy looked sleep-deprived as hell, so I figured he crashed on the ship.
That's a start. Would it be okay if I assemble a Federation search party? I'd feel better if we sweep that area for signs of a struggle.
There were soldiers everywhere. I don't see how anything could have gone unnoticed.
The human ran a hand through his hair, revealing a few hints of grey by his earlobe.
But very well, I'll get General Bless to put together a search party and meet us in the hangar bay.
Us? Are you code?
Yes, I'll help you. Look, like you said, Gorsh is my friend too.
I didn't want General Rykov to tag along and interfere with our investigation. What if he was coming to make sure we didn't stumble across anything? This was his last opportunity to cover up any human misdeeds. But how could I say that without revealing my suspicions of Terran involvement? Thank you, sir, I sighed. The human dipped his head, slipping his navy jacket onto my shoulders. Grime was smeared on the shoulder cuffs from the battle, but the medals clipped to his chest still sparkled. The uniform made him appear regal and authoritative as we sped down the ship's corridors. It was strange how the most dangerous species in the galaxy was so unassuming and noble to the eyes. Rykov stifled a yawn as we stopped by the pie seat, and my nerves grew unsettled. There was no sign of the Federation soldiers who were allegedly on their way. For a ship that was tied up in interdimensional madness, I found it odd that no soldiers were posted around it. Didn't I hear the Terrans order 2 sentries to keep watch at all times? Either someone was shirking their duties, or the General cleared out potential witnesses. As those thoughts crossed my mind, an exterior door swung open. A wiry human entered the hangar bay clad in black military gear that was several sizes too large. He carried only an aged pistol rather than the Terran's standard-issue plasma rifle. Perhaps it was preconceived notions, but this rascal didn't look the part of a trained killer. I mean, every few steps he was pushing his helmet off his eyes.
You don't salute officers anymore, boy?
Rykov hissed in a dangerously low tone. The scrawny figure pressed a hand to his head.
Sorry, I zoned out.
Sorry, sir.
The General's expression radiated suspicion, and his arm inched towards his hip.
Who are you? I don't recognize you.
I'm, Private Marino. I'm you, sir.
Your name doesn't sound familiar at all. What were you doing out there anyways?
Having a smoke, sir.
The man replied. General Rykov drew his sidearm in a heartbeat.
Bullshit. Get on the ground.
Ooh, what did I say?
Smoking has been prohibited in the military for a century, you daft fool. If you were doing it, you wouldn't tell me.
Marino, if that was his real name, bolted toward the door. I didn't know what his involvement was, but he must know something about Gorsh's disappearance. We couldn't let him escape. Suddenly, I was glad to have Rykov present after all. Human soldiers were excellent at tracking targets and making snap decisions under duress. I was willing to see Rykov lining Marino up with his pistol, however. We needed this guy for questioning, not as a corpse to autopsy. The General's finger depressed the trigger and a loud crack split the air. The intruder stumbled with a yelp, clutching at his leg. A plasma bolt through the kneecap wasn't lethal, but it did leave the target crippled. Marino fired a few wild shots in our direction, which missed their mark. I dropped to the floor, not wanting to risk a lucky hit. Rykov shrank back as well, barking several curses. His jammed pistol left him unable to return fire. Surely the General would try to keep the intruder cornered until backup arrived. It was the logical, risk-averse decision. Our opponent crawled behind a shipping crate, grunting in pain. General Rykov took the retreat as an invitation to charge, a clear sign of human derangement. If Marino reacted quick enough, the General could be taken out at point-blank range. My heart skipped a beat as Rykov scaled the crate, then lunged at his target from above. The aerial ambush caught Marino by surprise, and the gun slipped out of his grasp. The 2 Terrans rolled out from behind the container, locked in a frenetic tussle. Rykov pinned the smaller guy and started to choke him out. A human with its oxygen supply cut off was like a fish out of water, flailing about. A desperate punch connected with the General's face, but his stranglehold didn't slacken.
What in the stars is going on?
A gravity hoist asked behind me. General Blaze entered the hangar bay accompanied by 5 Federation soldiers. I could imagine the ill-tempered Jatari's bewilderment. It must appear like Rykov was asphyxiating one of his own soldiers, a young, weaker fellow at that. Add the human's curious expression, and one might assume he had a nervous breakdown. That guy's Marino. He dressed up as a Terran soldier for some reason, but I don't think he is one, I answered. We tried the flare when we caught him, and Rykov is trying to take him out. A flash of silver caught my eye as Marino fished an object out of his pocket. Rykov didn't notice until the blade slashed across his cheek. The officer recoiled slightly, giving his opponent the chance to land a knee to the stomach. The Terran war criminal tumbled back, cupping a hand to his face. Bright red blood trickled between his fingers and rolled across his knuckles in rivulets. That wound must be deep enough to require stitches. General Blaise gestured to his team. The Federation soldiers rounded on the Reno, hollering at him to drop his weapons. Surrounded and outnumbered, the human intruder released a knife. I was relieved to see him alive and in Federation custody.
Thanks, guys.
Rykov panted, staggering to his feet.
Take this one to the brig.
The general dropped the hand from his face and a chill raced down my spine. The Federation soldiers gaped in open horror as the same realization dawned on them. Even General Blaise looked shaken. Rykov blinked in confusion.
Why are you all looking at me like that?
The scar you have, I muttered. When they found you dead. The human traced a finger across his right cheek, feeling the gash's shape. His expression morphed into a deep frown. Touch revealed the familiar pattern as well as any mirror. Perhaps, for all our effort, we hadn't altered the future at all.